Okay, welcome back. We're, because these foundational practices are so important, and because we will have plenty of time still to engage in Tonglen with the various groups. Like yesterday we did ourself, Tonglen, imagining ourself as young or old or in our current situation. We will be getting to those other groups of Tonglen with strangers, Tonglen with someone labeled difficult, with guidance. And if you're like me with this practice, oftentimes if it feels dry, confusing, not very kind of boring almost, like, oh, I just do this, I just do this, rote, then we can drop back to any one of the four thoughts that turn the mind to moisten the practice when we really understand our suffering and we really understand the suffering of others. Tonglen would almost burst forth spontaneously because of our Buddha nature. So we can drop back. I said I wanted to not say that. We can drop in, because it's not a back, drop into the deep foundational practices. They are as deep as Tonglen, as important, and it's founded on them, to the four thoughts that turn the mind and or the four immeasurables. So Bill is going to review the four thoughts that turn the mind in a more succinct way than yesterday. And then we'll do, those lead to a sense of needing refuge. We should take refuge when we have a sense of we need it. Because we're going to die, because we suffer, because karma's for sure, and all the things that Bill will now share. And then we'll take refuge, and then I'll do a fairly succinct, I hope, review of the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And then we'll be moving right into Tonglen practices over and over for the rest of the day, with probably some Q&A after lunch. Sound like a plan? Well, we'll see what happens. Okay, good. Bill.
The four thoughts that turn to mind, as I mentioned yesterday, are a way of really taking stock of our situation, providing getting ourselves clear about the situation that we're in. And the way it's often presented, it's getting clear about how rare our circumstances are. These circumstances are impermanent. Many of the things that we do, all of the things that we do that come out of confusion lead to more confusion and more suffering. So if we really look carefully at these, we will be woke up a little bit. We'll wake up and be careful about what we do. And each of them can go very, very deep. And each of them can give us great motivation to turn towards the Dharma, to turn towards refuge. But just as refuge offers both protection from going further into the patterns of confusion, refuge offers also the possibility of the profound fruition of what's our true potential. And in the same way, the reflection on the four thoughts can offer us a clearer picture, perhaps cause us to take seriously the potential that we have. We can look at the rarity of our human existence and all the opportunities that we have, and the fact that it's impermanent. And we could just be fearful that it could be all downhill from here. But we could also take seriously that the most profound thing that's precious about this human existence is that we actually can discover our Buddha nature. And we can do those things that lead towards this discovery. We can also look at impermanence in the same way, appreciating both the fleetingness of this opportunity, but also the fact that all our patterns that we feel trapped by are impermanent. And therein lies profound opportunity. In the same way, we can appreciate karma and its inexorable churning that it causes as we go through life, guided by confusion. But we can also appreciate that we can create the karmic imprints that will allow us to engage in activities of body, speech, and mind which lead towards liberation. And in the same way, we can carefully look without fear at our own patterns of suffering and confusion. And the more deeply we look, the more clearly we see how we hold those patterns in place, the more clear it will be how deep the possibility for liberation goes, and that all suffering is in fact possible to go beyond. So this morning, since time is brief, I want to just ask us to examine karma from this point of view of how do we create the conditions for positive outcomes, how do we create the conditions for insight. And the one question that I want to pose is, how do I take it more seriously, this idea of actually creating karmic imprints, and whether it's through the contemplations of the four thoughts, or the cultivation of the four immeasurables, or the practices that lead us to deeper and deeper understanding of ultimate bodhicitta. How do I take that seriously? It's one thing to adopt these as philosophical positions or ideas. It's a very different thing to look into these as things to cultivate over and over again till they permeate our being. So just I'll offer an example, a pair that you can contemplate, but you can contemplate any pair of kinds of karmic imprints that you can engage in. You can pick one that's negative, one that you know is not helpful, and one that you know would be helpful, so that it would be there when you wanted to rely on it. And one pair that you could look at is, on one side, cultivating the ability to be really good at self-criticism and judgment. It is a karmic imprint we can create. You could, on the other hand, say, what would it be like if I spent as much time creating the karmic imprint of gentle, loving acceptance of what arises in my stream of being. You can pick any pair, whatever is juicy in your life, but pick two. And if you find yourself sort of noting peripherally the influence of the contemplation of impermanence, precious human existence, the results of negative action as suffering, that's fine. But just take a moment and just think about what it's like to actually create the imprint and to choose what imprints you wish to create.
Thank you, Bill. That was interesting. I saw that I was the one that decides what goes on in there. Not that self-centered one, but just the basic everyday I. It wasn't the Buddha, it wasn't teachers, it wasn't Jesus, it wasn't my enemies, it was me. So that's good to know. Who's in charge? Who's doing this? Who's deciding? So as we think about those 4 thoughts occasionally, as the Gala Rinpoche, Bokar Rinpoche, Lama Michael, all the Kagyu teachers point out how very important it is to just think about those every day. Even 1 minute, you pull this out and you just look at the titles. Precious Human Existence, Impermanence, which I like to call death. Impermanence and death, truth of karma, faults of samsara. Just, oh yeah, those are the conditions. Then that leads us to see we need help. We need some kind of reliable source of inspiration, guidance, love, compassion, and that leads us to taking refuge. So just think for a moment how much of the day we actually rely on things that are not such reliable refuge anyway. I do. Acquisitions of various kinds, homes, houses, cars, electronic devices, relationships, and especially this body and this life. I rely on it like it's going to always be there. But none of those things are always going to be there. And even in the moment, they sometimes, this is a strong word, but betray us in the sense of don't do what we need, want, hope for. Body gets sick, body ages, life ends, relationships change. Houses could fall down in an earthquake or catch on fire or just get moldy, whatever houses do. But we tend to take refuge in those from patterns. So just take a moment and notice that in your own life. How we rely on that which is impermanent, unreliable, impure. Nothing wrong with these things. They're fine. It's just that we place a burden on them that they can't bear. Then we can think about what is reliable in the world. What is it that, is there anything that when I turn to it, toward it, it results in a more peaceful mind, results in me being able to be kinder, see more clearly. What's that? What could it be? Sure, occasionally good, wise friends, certainly, but not always. Sometimes their advice isn't helpful, or they're not available. So we instead look for refuge in the three jewels. The Buddha, and we can think simply of Shakyamuni Buddha, took this human form in this era about 2,600 years ago and set an example of becoming completely free of all suffering. So that Buddha Shakyamuni is a model. And we take refuge in the inner awakened being within us, our own pure, vibrant, ever-present Buddha nature. This for sure is a genuine, lasting refuge. One teacher said, if you want to fail at something, you can realize you will fail at trying to erase your Buddha nature. You will never get rid of it. It's beyond you, beyond time, beyond space. Genuine, lasting refuge. And we can take refuge in the Dharma, the body of teachings, all the practices that show the way to liberation. Tonglen's one of those. And we can take refuge in our inner Dharma, that commitment to practice the teachings and bring them into our stream of consciousness, as Bill just pointed out. We get to choose which thing we develop. We can integrate these marvelous practices into our stream of consciousness. And we can take refuge in the Sangha, community of practitioners, even those who come regularly here, the lay Sangha. And the main object of refuge is the exalted Sangha, those who have accomplished advanced levels of realization or complete enlightenment. And there are such beings right now on this very earth and in other realms, but who have accomplished that. We can take refuge in that. And they pass on what they experience and learn. And without that, we'd never meet the genuine Dharma. So we turn to these objects of refuge as more reliable than the kind of impermanent, confused, difficult things that we usually rely on. And along with refuge, we generate bodhicitta. Bodhi, awakened citta mind, awakened mind heart. And that's the wish that everything we think, say, or do from our practice will benefit them without a single exception. No one left out. Open borders in the heart. No one blocked out. That's the bodhicitta heart. So let's recite this prayer together on page 12 of your booklet 3 times. Until I awaken, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the goodness of generosity and other virtues, may I awaken fully in order to help all beings. Until I awaken, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the goodness of generosity and other virtues, may I awaken fully in order to help all beings. Until I awaken, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the goodness of generosity and other virtues, may I awaken fully in order to help all beings. In the middle of that prayer where it says the goodness of generosity and other virtues, that's a reference to the 6 perfections, which we're not reviewing so much in this practice, but just to name them. And you can always look them up, and they're wonderful to study and practice. Generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. So generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. Like the 4 immeasurables, they're just another set of practices that speed us on the path if we take them seriously, study them, contemplate them, meditate on them, integrate them. Okay. Now a little short review of the 4 immeasurables. Yesterday, I started with the immeasurable equanimity, and we did a contemplation of the 3 beings imagining in front of us, someone you feel warm-hearted towards, someone you feel neutral towards, someone you feel difficulty with. So, the equanimity towards friend, stranger, enemy. Really good to carry that sense with us. And there's so many ways to do it. That meditation we did is one. You look at them, see where your feelings came from. Imagine them changing their behavior, seeing how you change, because all beings do change their behavior. Your friend is not a frozen friend. You've probably figured this out by now. And over our lifetimes, friends become strangers. Think of that. Your best friend in high school. Some of you may still know that one. I don't. Best friend in college or best friend at work. Long gone. Strangers now. And your friends now, and even think of this, your partner, your husband or wife or partner was a stranger not very long ago. Even you've been together 40 years. They were a stranger. And sometimes enemies become friends. Through that conflict even, working something out, can become a really close best friend. Where you kind of go, wow, I didn't realize that gem of a person till I fought with them. And now I see what a good friend that can be. So these categories, totally impermanent, change all the time. And just realizing that can lead us to some equanimity. And realizing too, we're applying the label. Someone I call difficult, someone else calls beloved. Someone I call beloved, someone else sees as their enemy. Just labels based on confusion, personal preference. No one's a complete enemy to everyone in the world. No one. No one's a complete friend to everyone in the world. It's far more complex. And every single person we call stranger is a friend to someone, an enemy to someone. This is just all moving and changing. And we don't need to grab and make it make ourselves suffer. So that's what we looked at yesterday, and we looked a bit at loving kindness, which is the wish for happiness for all beings. That they have the personal, material, regular human happiness, food, shelter, clothing, friends, medicine, adequate care, peaceful lives. And then that the biggest loving kindness my teachers say that you can give is that we wish for them peaceful minds and hearts, however they're going to get there. For sure, they're not all going to get there through Buddhism in this life, and we're not proselytizing. So we wish them some kind of practices, guidance that will lead them to a kind and loving and peaceful heart and life. Not our business how they get there. Just appreciate it and wish that they find it. They might find it through Christianity or being an agnostic or being a Muslim. Good. Just so they find that. The true nature of all those religions is to a peaceful mind and heart and good ethics. So, I thought we might look just a little closer today at immeasurable joy, just for a short bit. So again, remembering why immeasurable. Because beings are limitless. We vow to save them all. That's the great vow of the Zen monasteries. Beings are limitless. I vow to save them all. Kleshas and afflictions are endless within me. I vow to end them all. Amazing. That's the Bodhisattva mind. Absolutely seeming to be impossible, but what else to do with our time? What could be more important? So in this immeasurable joy, I think beings who thought about this, who have taught about this, sat and thought, what's in the way of me having immeasurable joy? What keeps me from totally enjoying every luminous, precious moment? And there are many things, but they focused on something very, very important that, if you're like me, I don't like to look at, which is sometimes I'm jealous and sometimes I'm envious. And it often occurs when someone's doing something really good and wonderful in the world. I'm jealous of them. I'm so jealous at times of my teacher. My teacher, Venerable Thupten Chidren, she has thousands of students, and she, through her practice, created a situation with, I think there's 13 monastics out there at Sravasti Abbey. She started that just 2003, not so long ago. Huge buildings all paid for, beautiful land, 240 acres of forest, all paid for by donations. And she's so brilliant when she teaches. Oh, she doesn't seem confused like I get sometimes. And so I can sit there. I remember being at the Abbey with her while she's teaching, and at times just sitting there like, I am so jealous. And good you see it. And then here's the thought process on immeasurable joy. Okay, number one, who's suffering from that state of mind? I am so jealous. Who's the first casualty? moi. I'm robbing self of the joy of being with this amazing teacher and just going, wow, bliss. Could be, right? Except jealousy hijacks that. The other thing that's pretty crazy about it is that there's nothing more I would want to have happening in the world than that she would be there doing exactly what she's doing. That's what I want in the world. And then I'm sitting there. What's wrong with this picture? So it's nice when we can do these practices where we can see that and where we can begin to subdue it, or that's not the right word, it just kind of melts away. When you see the trick you're playing on yourself, the trick the ego's playing on you, the false ego, the trick it's robbing you of just being absolutely rejoicing in this goodness. Anytime goodness shows up, anytime, rejoice in it. It's so rare in the world. Forget about the self, the competition, and all that. But first we have to see it. Okay, so let's engage in this for each of us. So bring to mind someone who you feel some jealousy toward, or a situation where that rises up in your mind. They might have what you'd like to have. It could be a certain mental state. They seem smarter, they're more peaceful. Whatever it is that you wish you had and you see they have. Or it could be material. They have fortune, nice car, big boat, good house, big retirement account. So just bring that one to mind, or the situation. Now, notice that that person feels pleasure from this and enjoys this, gets a certain kind of happiness from it. It's a good thing in their lives. See if you can find some kind of connection between their enjoyment and your own happiness. See if you can experience some sympathetic joy connected to their enjoyment. You might ask, well, I see they are happy, and I see if I stay jealous, I'm unhappy. Why not enjoy their enjoyment? Why leave it all to them? And if you have found some peace or joy in that situation, then go a little further and think, I hope they're never separated from their joy. I hope they always have that joy. I hope they always have some happiness and joy in their lives. Then see if this one works for you. Bring to mind someone you're jealous about in the Dharma. Someone who maybe has more time than you do to practice, came to the Dharma earlier in life, seems to understand it easier than you do, whatever it is, someone in the Dharma. And notice the feeling again of envy, or I wish, or the feeling of being left out of that. How much you want it and you don't have it yet. And then again, look at their joy, their Dharma joy. Just go back and forth, working it between that sense of envy or jealousy, confusion, and then looking at their joy and the joy they put out into the world by practicing Dharma that way. Just keep looking back and forth. See what you see. Be compassionate with any jealous feelings that show up. Be soft toward them. They're just feelings and thoughts. There's no shoulds about it. Just see what's there. And now see how good it is that they bring Dharma into the world, that they have that time, resources, interest, freedom. And see if you can see how you benefit from your connection to them. And to them being able to do that, to them having those conditions. See if your jealousy changes in any way to a more even state or even to happiness, that they are having that, doing that. But whatever arises, meet it with kindness. You might even be able to see that by they're doing that, being that, your opportunity to practice Dharma grows. just from the connection. Okay, so one thing I'll remind people, anytime when you're doing Tonglen and it gets confusing, or it's like too much, you know, this is too much, I don't want to take this on, or whatever, or it just feels flat, or whatever, then you can always come back to any one of the four immeasurables. Stay warm and moisten your heart. You can feel that, right? A kind of a warmth comes up. And so you can do that until it feels moist again. Then try another Tonglen. Okay? Making sense. So it's like we're learning how to knead this dough. If it's too dry, and put some moisture in. You know, not to start out with your worst enemy. I'm going to take their suffering, except I hate them. So, you know, starting with yourself, compassion towards self, so important. And compassion towards whatever shows up. You're doing something like immeasurable joy, and you find, my mind won't go beyond this jealousy. It's stuck. Okay, hi, stuckness. Hi. What do you have to tell me? I've been doing that with my anxiety about being up here in this role. And it's working so well, I just want to share that. This morning it was like, okay, I was going along very happy, having my tea and thinking outline and relying on Bill being with me and Dora, which makes it tons easier. And then all of a sudden, bam, this physical, just totally physical comes in, just like clutch. And I used to just try and sail by it, like, oh, I'm nervous, but I don't want to feel that. Now I go, oh, hi, anxiety, yeah, sure. Okay, feel you right here, feel you here, yeah, okay. All right, hello, I feel you, I don't like you, but I feel you. And just playful like that, it starts going down. Because I'm not running away from it anymore. And I'm not judging it so much. You can hear in my voice, I still judge it a little. But it's getting so much easier. Like, oh, hello, you just banged open the door and here you are. All of a sudden going, but what if? I go, okay, yeah, what if? I guess we'll deal with it if we get there. Okay. So let's just take a quick break and then we're going to launch into our Tonglen. This is, remember yesterday I said, can we go to the bathroom, all of us, in 7 minutes? And I think we did it. So do your best to keep the silence, please.